Have you ever heard someone say, "You're too young to be alone forever"? That's exactly what Marvin heard again and again after his wife passed away when he was 69. Friends meant well. They told him he was still vibrant, still had time, still deserved companionship. It all sounded reasonable. After all, no one wants to imagine their later years filled with silence and solitude. And so, after 2 years of quiet healing, Marvin began dating again. He met someone lovely, kind, gentle, easy to talk to. They shared dinners, long walks, laughter. It felt good, familiar, reassuring, but something unexpected happened. As time went on, Marvin began to miss something he couldn't quite explain: the quiet mornings, his own schedule. The small, unspoken peace of moving through the day without adjusting to someone else. Slowly, that peace slipped away. Sleep became more restless. Disagreements started small, but grew. And eventually, Marvin felt something far worse than loneliness: disconnection from himself. One day, he said something that stayed with me. "I didn't feel lonely when I was by myself. I felt lonely when I had to lose myself to keep someone else happy." That one sentence captures what so many people don't talk about. We live in a world that celebrates love stories, especially those that last into old age. Movies, books, even well-meaning family members make us believe that romance is the ultimate goal. But the truth, for some people, especially after 65, the most loving decision you can make is to choose yourself, because being single doesn't mean being lonely. It can mean freedom, stability, emotional clarity. It can mean waking up each morning with no compromises and going to bed each night with your peace still intact. Maybe no one has ever told you this, but let me say it now. You don't need to be with someone to feel whole. And if you're someone who's in this stage of life, wondering whether it's too late to start over, to choose quiet over chaos, or to finally prioritize your own peace, this video is for you. We're going to walk through 8 powerful, eye-opening reasons why staying single after 65 isn't just okay, it might be the best decision you ever make for your health, your heart, and your happiness. Stick with me. You might just see aging and love in a whole new light. Reason number 1. Emotional stress from conflict. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a relationship where the smallest disagreements lingered in your chest long after the conversation ended? As we get older, something shifts in how we carry emotional weight. When we're young, conflict feels like a challenge, something to overcome, something to grow through. But past a certain age, especially after 65, conflict starts to feel heavier, slower to pass, harder to recover from. That's because our nervous system changes with age. Our sleep becomes more fragile, our patience a bit thinner, and stress takes a deeper toll. Even something as simple as a difference in daily routines or a misunderstood comment can leave you emotionally unsettled for days, not hours. I want to tell you about Edith. She was 73 when she met someone after being single for over 10 years. In the beginning, she was thrilled: dinners out, phone calls, someone to talk to during the quiet evenings. But slowly, cracks began to show. He started criticizing how she spent her time. He called too often, expected immediate responses, questioned small choices. It wasn't dramatic, not at first, but over time, it became exhausting. Edith said something I'll never forget. "When I left that relationship, I felt like I slept through the night for the first time in years." That's the kind of emotional stress many older adults quietly carry. A relationship, even with the best intentions, can reopen wounds we thought were long healed. It can reintroduce anxiety, restlessness, or a quiet tension that follows you from room to room. Peace is something we start to value more as we age. And sometimes, being alone isn't lonely, it's protective, it's calm, it's healing. So if you find yourself second-guessing whether companionship is worth the emotional ups and downs, you're not alone. There's no shame in choosing quiet over chaos, especially when that peace becomes essential to your health. And hey, if this message is resonating with you or making you think of someone you love, I invite you to stick around. There's so much more we're going to explore in this video. And if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and tap the bell icon. We create thoughtful, honest content about aging, healing, and living with intention, and we'd love to have you with us on this journey. Let's keep going. The next reason might surprise you even more. Reason number 2, financial complications. Let's talk about something that often goes unspoken, but touches every part of our lives after retirement: money. By the time we reach our late 60s or 70s, most of us are no longer earning like we used to. Retirement income is fixed, savings are limited, and every dollar becomes something we've planned for, sometimes for decades. That financial stability is not just about numbers in a bank account. It's peace of mind, it's medical security. It's knowing we'll be okay. But what happens when you bring a new partner into that picture? For some, love and companionship are worth every risk. But for others, blending finances can introduce a level of stress that slowly erodes the very security we've worked so hard to build. And often, it starts small. Take Roger, for example. At 68, he reconnected with an old friend from high school. Their connection was fast, easy, even comforting. Within months, she moved in. At first, everything felt manageable. Roger paid for dinners, short trips, little upgrades around the house. It felt good to give, but over time, Roger noticed something unsettling. His savings were disappearing more quickly than expected. His partner had expensive tastes, and while she spoke of sharing the load, her contributions rarely came through. When Roger finally brought it up, the conversation didn't go well. What had begun as warmth turned into quiet resentment, and worse, a creeping fear: what if I can't recover financially from this? It's a story more common than we think. Merging finances isn't just about the day-to-day spending. It affects taxes, insurance, social security, and in some cases, even pension eligibility. One legal signature, like remarriage, could shift how your benefits are distributed or jeopardize future plans for your children. And inheritance, that can get messy. If assets aren't carefully protected or documented, a new partner could legally gain access to parts of your estate, possibly overriding your wishes and hurting the people you love most. The truth is, money may not buy happiness, but financial stress can surely take it away. Choosing to remain single later in life doesn't mean you're afraid of love. It might just mean you're protecting what you've spent a lifetime building. It gives you the freedom to spend or save on your terms. No negotiations, no pressure, no silent tension over who paid for what. For many older adults, that financial autonomy is not about selfishness, it's about survival. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and your legacy is to stay in control. Reason number 3, loss of routine and personal space. There's something incredibly comforting about routine, especially as we grow older. Waking up at the same hour, brewing that one perfect cup of tea, sitting quietly in the morning light with your favorite book or the newspaper. Maybe you go for a gentle walk at just the right time of day, when the air feels soft and familiar. These small habits might seem insignificant to others, but to many older adults, they're the threads that hold a peaceful life together. That's why, when a new relationship enters the picture, it can feel jarring. Not because there's anything wrong with companionship, but because compromise slowly starts to chip away at the life you've carefully shaped. Louise, 70, had lived on her own for over a decade. Her days had a quiet rhythm. She woke early, journaled in her garden, then spent long afternoons reading or knitting. When she met someone new, she was hopeful. He was kind. Weekends together turned into living together. But that's when everything shifted. He liked to sleep late. He blared the television first thing in the morning. He rearranged her kitchen without asking. They didn't fight. He wasn't unkind. But Louise felt something slipping: her calm, her control, her space. I didn't realize how much my little routines mattered, she told me once, until they were no longer mine. That's the heart of it. A new relationship often means sharing not just a home, but your habits, your silence, your choices. Suddenly, the refrigerator holds someone else's groceries. The TV remote isn't just yours anymore. Even your quiet afternoon walk might be postponed or skipped because someone else wants to do something different. For some people, that kind of merging feels natural, even joyful. But for others, especially those who found healing in solitude, it can feel like being gently erased. Not through conflict, but through compromise after compromise. Personal space isn't just about square footage, it's about autonomy. The ability to live life at your own pace, to follow your own rhythm without negotiation. After decades of caregiving, working, adjusting for others, many seniors say this freedom is the first taste of real peace. And it's sacred. Staying single doesn't mean shutting others out. It means protecting the balance you've built. It means honoring your routines not because they're rigid, but because they remind you who you are. In the end, personal space isn't a luxury in old age. It's a form of self-respect. And sometimes, choosing solitude is simply choosing to continue living life on your own beautiful terms. Reason #4. Caregiving burden. Have you ever tried to lift a suitcase that looked light only to realize, once it was in your hands, just how heavy it really was? That's what caregiving can feel like. A weight you don't fully understand until it's resting on your own shoulders. When we imagine love in our later years, we picture walks in the park, shared photos at family dinners, maybe to rocking chairs on a sunny porch. What we don't picture is the pill organizer that suddenly needs refilling twice a day, the endless rides to doctor's appointments, or the aching quiet of being up at 3 a.m. while your partner struggles to breathe. George knows this feeling well. At 76, he met Ruth at a church potluck. She was sweet, funny, and they fit together easily. Within a year they were living under the same roof. Then Ruth's mobility began to fade. What started as a little extra help with buttons on her coat turned into bathing, cooking, lifting, medication schedules tasks that swallowed every corner of George's day and seeped into his nights. One afternoon he confessed to a friend, "I'm so tired I forget my own doctor's appointments." His blood pressure climbed, his back ached constantly, and the community events he once loved became distant memories. Love hadn't disappeared, but it had morphed into a 24-hour responsibility he never planned for and wasn't physically prepared to carry. Numbers back this up. Nearly 1 in 5 adults over 65 in the United States is an unpaid caregiver. Many do it out of devotion, but devotion doesn't erase exhaustion. The emotional toll can be just as crushing: anxiety, guilt, even depression, because every bad test result feels personal, and every quiet hospital hallway echoes inside your own chest. Choosing to remain single isn't a refusal to care, it's an acknowledgement of limits. It's understanding that your energy is a finite, precious resource and that preserving it may be the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for those who already rely on you. Your grandkids, your community, your own aging body. Solitude can protect your health, safeguard your sleep, and leave space for the joys you worked a lifetime to enjoy. So, if you're weighing the promise of companionship against the very real possibility of becoming a full-time nurse, remember, you're not selfish for asking, "Can I realistically do this?" You're wise. If this perspective resonates, if it makes you pause, nod, or maybe even exhale a little relief, feel free to stay with us. Tap subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss the next chapter in our series on living intentionally after 65. Together, we're exploring choices that honor our bodies, our hearts, and our hard-earned peace. Reason number 5. Family tensions and inheritance issues. It's a quiet kind of heartbreak, the moment you realize that your search for companionship might come at the cost of your closest relationships. Martha, 66, had been widowed for several years when she met Charles at a local book club. He was kind, intelligent, and shared her love of history. Their afternoons together felt like a second chance at joy. But when she mentioned him to her 2 grown sons, the atmosphere shifted. There was no celebration, just silence. Over time, that silence turned to subtle interrogations, questions about her bank accounts, her will, even her medication. It wasn't outright hostility, but a quiet wall went up between them. Eventually, Martha made the hardest decision. She ended her relationship with Charles. "I didn't lose him because we didn't love each other," she told a friend. "I lost him to keep peace with my sons." Stories like Martha's are more common than we talk about. When older adults begin new relationships, especially after the loss of a spouse, the ripple effect on family can be complex. Adult children, even well-meaning ones, may feel protective, territorial, or simply unsure of the new dynamic. They might fear losing influence, worrying about inheritance, or resent the time and emotional energy being redirected elsewhere. In some cases, their concerns are grounded. Relationships later in life can, intentionally or not, impact legal rights. Property might change hands. Wills may be altered. Beneficiaries can shift. A partner, even one who never intended harm, could inherit assets, leaving children confused or hurt after a parent passes. But often, the damage begins long before any legal paperwork. It begins with mistrust, unspoken resentment, and fractured communication, all of which strain the emotional foundation families have spent decades building. Choosing to remain single, for some, becomes not a rejection of love, but a preservation of peace. It's a way to maintain clear emotional and financial boundaries, to avoid misunderstandings that turn into lifelong regrets, and to honor the deep, irreplaceable bonds with children and grandchildren. That doesn't mean seniors should never seek connection, but it does mean that any relationship formed later in life should be approached with care, clarity, and open communication, not only with the partner, but with the family you've built over a lifetime. Because at the end of the day, harmony at home, the ability to gather your children for dinner, to hear your grandchildren laugh without tension in the air, is a kind of love too. And sometimes, it's the kind that's worth protecting most. Reason number 6, loss of freedom and independence. There's something incredibly precious that often goes unspoken as we age: freedom. Not the kind of freedom we chased in our 20s, wild and wide-eyed, but a quieter, deeper kind. The freedom to wake up when your body tells you to spend an afternoon in silence if that's what your soul craves. The freedom to eat cereal for dinner, rearrange your furniture just because, or book a train ride on a whim without having to check in or explain. After decades of raising children, building careers, and compromising for others, this kind of independence becomes sacred. But what happens when a new relationship enters the picture? Walter, 74, had just retired and was ready to fulfill a long-held dream, to travel across the country by train, visit old friends, see the places he had only read about. Then he met someone. She was kind, stable, and enjoyed the simple routines of home. But she didn't like traveling, didn't enjoy change, and was uncomfortable with long absences. So Walter, slowly and quietly, began letting go of his dream. Not out of resentment, he cared for her deeply, but compromise after compromise, he began to shrink. His days became smaller, his schedule more fixed, his spark a little dimmer. This is what many don't talk about when discussing relationships in later life. It's not always about conflict or dramatic disagreements. Sometimes, it's the subtle erosion of self, of spontaneity, of personal direction. And it happens with the best of intentions. Of course, every relationship requires some level of compromise. But in our golden years, we have to ask, what are we giving up, and is it worth it? Being single after 65 isn't about isolation. It's about reclaiming your autonomy, the right to make decisions without negotiation, to follow your own rhythm without disruption. It's the ability to live a day fully yours, shaped only by your preferences, your energy, your joy. Some might say that sounds selfish, but maybe it's not selfishness, maybe it's wisdom. Maybe, after a lifetime of meeting others halfway, you've earned the right to walk the full path yourself. When we talk about what makes life rich in older age, we often think of companionship. But sometimes, what truly feeds the soul is freedom, unstructured, undemanded, and shared. And in that space, many seniors rediscovered not only peace but purpose. Reason number 7. Pressure to settle for the wrong reasons. Have you ever agreed to something not because it was right but because you were afraid of what might happen if you didn't? Barbara, at 69, found herself in that very place. After years of being on her own, her friends were pairing off, one by one. Every dinner, every event, every group vacation, it became a sea of couples. She was the only single one left at the table. And though no one said anything outright, she felt it in the air. The questions, the pitying glances, the subtle suggestions that maybe it was time she put herself out there. So when a kind, well-meaning man began to show interest, Barbara said yes. He was polite, stable, checked all the right boxes. But something was missing: connection, laughter, that quiet sense of being truly seen. Over time, she realized she felt lonelier sitting beside him than she ever did alone with her morning coffee and crossword. You see, when we make choices from fear of loneliness, fear of judgment, fear of being the odd one out, we're not really choosing at all. We're reacting, and reactions, especially at this stage in life, often lead us down roads that don't honor who we are. We live in a world that still, somehow, equates being alone with being incomplete. But what if the opposite is true? What if choosing to stay single on purpose, with clarity and pride, is one of the most powerful declarations of self-love there is? It takes courage to walk into a room and own your solitude, To say, I'd rather be alone and at peace than partnered and unsettled. But in doing so, we make space for authenticity. We make space for a life that fits us, not one that simply looks right on paper. So the next time you feel that pressure creeping in, whether it's from society, family, or even your own internal voice, pause and ask, am I doing this from love? Or from fear? Because love, true love, whether it's with someone else or with yourself, never comes from pressure. It grows in freedom. It grows in truth. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to say no, so you can say a deeper yes to yourself. Reason number 8. Risk of abuse or unhealthy dependence. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever stayed in a relationship not because it felt right, but because the idea of being alone felt worse? This fear is far more common than many realize, especially as we age. Loneliness can feel heavy, almost unbearable at times. And in that vulnerable space, it becomes all too easy to accept relationships that are less than safe, relationships that slowly chip away at our self-worth. I want to share with you the story of Elaine, who is now 74. After her husband passed, she began dating a man who, at first, seemed attentive and kind. But over time, she noticed subtle things. He insisted on knowing where she was at all times. He questioned her spending, even though they didn't share finances. He made her feel guilty for wanting space to see her grandchildren. Slowly, Elaine wasn't making her own choices anymore. She was just trying to keep the peace. What happened to Elaine isn't rare. Some partners, knowingly or unknowingly, exploit the fears, health limitations, or emotional vulnerability that often come with aging. It doesn't always start with yelling or control. It starts with small boundaries being crossed, and it builds from there. And the truth is, it's often harder for older adults to leave these relationships. Why? Because they might be physically weaker, emotionally isolated, financially dependent, or afraid of what others will think. The fear of being judged as difficult, or of returning to a life alone, can feel paralyzing. But here's what matters. No one, regardless of age, deserves to feel unsafe or controlled. Your later years should be a time of dignity, autonomy, and peace, not a struggle to protect your boundaries in your own home. Choosing to stay single isn't a failure. It's a form of protection. It's reclaiming your space, your safety, and your say in what your life looks like. Being alone does not mean being unloved. In fact, loving yourself enough to avoid harmful situations is one of the most powerful kinds of love there is. So, if you or someone you care about is feeling uneasy in a relationship, listen to that feeling. Pay attention to the red flags. You are never too old to choose peace, to choose freedom, to choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, your well-being is not a luxury, it's a right. So, let me say this clearly: being single after 65 is not a failure. In fact, for many, it's the most empowering decision they've ever made. It's not about giving up on love. It's about choosing a different kind of love, the one you give to yourself. At this stage in life, freedom takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just about doing what you want, it's about living without pressure, without pretending, without bending yourself to fit someone else's expectations. It's about waking up and knowing the day belongs to you, your pace, your passion, your peace. Take time for what really matters. Discovering new interests, healing old wounds, reconnecting with your inner voice. Remember, growth doesn't stop with age. In fact, the most beautiful kind of growth often happens when the noise of the world fades, and you finally have the space to hear your own soul speak. One woman once told me, peace is not something someone gives you. It's something you build within yourself, brick by brick, with your own hands. That stayed with me. Because how many of us have stayed in something, whether it's a relationship, a habit, or a role, just to avoid rocking the boat, just to avoid being alone? But here's the truth. If being in a relationship means losing your sense of self, walking on eggshells, or feeling unsafe, then being alone isn't lonely, it's a lifeline. You absolutely have the right to walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You owe yourself that much. So as we close this video, I want you to remember, aging isn't about fading away. It's about showing up more fully for the life that's still yours. Prioritize your peace, guard your safety, and honor your worth. The 8 reasons we shared today aren't a rejection of love. They are a reminder that love, true love, should never come at the cost of your well-being, your freedom, or your peace of mind. If this message resonated with you, and if you want more content that honors your journey and your wisdom, consider subscribing. Let's walk this path together with strength, clarity, and purpose. You deserve a life that feels good on the inside, even if it looks quiet from the outside.